All right. Welcome everyone to the 2020 biennial and first virtual road conference. My name is Lopez Phillips, and I'm a faculty member here at UCSF Fresno Regional Campus. I want to welcome all of you today. I'm the chair of the Road Advisory Committee, and we've been working really hard at trying to put a schedule together that would be just some great information for all of our aspiring doctors here in the San Joaquin Valley and beyond. Thank you for being here. Our San Joaquin Valley is federally designated medically underserved. This means we have a medical professional shortage. And now, more than ever, you are needed. You are our future medical professionals. And that is the purpose of the Road Conference, reaching out to aspiring doctors. It's our goal that the information you gain from this conference will help you to learn more about what it takes to become a doctor. And more so than that you will understand the importance of returning to the San Joaquin Valley as a doctor so that you can provide great care to our communities. We're very excited to share that we have over 400 students that have registered to attend this conference. I see that people are sharing where they're from in the chat, so please continue to do that. It looks like we have great representation from our universities here locally and within the Joaquin Valley. You see Doctors Academy, you see Merced, Fresno State. We do have some high school students that have joined us specifically through the Doctors Academy and our Career Technical Ed programs, so thank you so much. As far as sharing, I want to call your attention to the top right corner of the shared screen. You'll see that we are on social media. We have a Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook account, so you can share using our hashtag, which is RoadSJV2020. So before we begin with our keynote speakers, I need to announce a few housekeeping items. You all should have received a PDF copy of the conference agenda, so please refer to that for information on our presenters and their session descriptions. You can also refer to our agendas located at our website, which is sjvpred.ucsf.edu. And you will notice, I'll just go ahead and click to this screen here. The link is listed there and you'll see a screenshot of our agenda for today. All of our sessions are going to be accessible through this webinar link that we're on currently. But for concurrent sessions, which will start at 4:45 p.m., the Zoom links will be different. So please refer to the online or PDF program for those specific links. Those are going to be like breakout sessions. So I will remind you before our concurrent sessions begin today, which is again at 4:45 p.m. At any point during the conference, you may come and go. You don't have to stay logged in the entire 2 days. This virtual environment is designed to allow you to attend any sessions that you find interesting and helpful. We will be recording most sessions, so the post on the website will indicate which sessions are scheduled to be recorded. We plan to have those recordings posted to our website, and we'll be sending an email to all of the participants once those sessions recordings are accessible online in the weeks to come. Some of our presenters may have handouts or presentation slides that they would like to share with you. And if so, we will encourage them to share during their session and in the chat feature. If a presenter wants to share beyond the session and allows us to post on our website, we will definitely place those resources online once the recordings are complete as well. And finally, as you have questions during the conference, we have the question and answer feature enabled so that you can ask your questions. We have facilitators within each session to help with monitoring your questions. So with that, I'd like to acknowledge the sponsors of this conference: University of California, San Francisco, UCSF Fresno, which is the regional campus, our Associate Dean, Dr. Peterson, the Director of our Latino Center for Medical Education and Research, Dr. Catherine Flores, the San Joaquin Valley Prime Leadership Team, Dr. Rolon, Dr. Banh, and Dr. Elving, and our Director of Communications and Government Relations, Brandy Nikaido Ramos. I'd also like to give a special thanks to our Road Conference Advisory Board. They're all listed on the back page of the PDF conference program. So thank you to all of you who have provided input along the way. And finally, the staff at the Latino Center for their assistance and the facilitation that they're going to offer the next 2 days. We have a great lineup of presenters. They're all volunteering their time and their talents to share their expertise with you. So without further ado, I will now introduce our keynote speakers. Dr. Kenny Banh is an Assistant Dean of Undergraduate Medical Education at UCSF Fresno, and he's also an Associate Professor of Emergency Medicine, and he's the Director of Mobile Health and Learning and the COVID-19 Equity Project. Dr. Bahn's awards in teaching and service include the UCSF Academic Senate Distinction in Teaching and the California Medical Association's Compassionate Services Award. He is on the AAMC's Group on Regional Medical Campuses Committee that focuses on regional medical school campus development. Also, we have Dr. Enid Picart. She is with UCSF Fresno Emergency Medicine, and she's a resident. She's the proud daughter of immigrant parents and the first in her family to become a physician. Prior to becoming an emergency medicine resident, she dedicated half a decade to promoting community advocacy and community resident leadership development as an AmeriCorps member and community advocate for many diverse California and Central Valley communities. She's the proud alumna of UC Davis, UCF Fresno, and UC Merced SJV Prime Medical School Program. Enid served on the Latino Medical Student Association board as a Sacramento representative. And she served as the grants manager and co-director of the student board for the Stockton Health Empowerment Conference. She's done a lot of volunteering, she's done some amazing work, and we cannot wait to hear from Enid and Dr. Banh. So without further ado, Dr. Banh, you are up first.
All right. Thank you so much for that introduction, Dr. Lopez Phillips. I hope I can live up to such a such an opening here. So welcome everyone. I'm super excited to be here in our first virtual road conference. And I've been here for a lot of years with the development of all these things. So it's fantastic to connect with students from all ages and all within the San Joaquin Valley. Besides those other rules, I will touch base a little bit about admissions because I have a lovely opportunity to work with UCSF on the admissions committee and about how to get into medical school in my view. But I'd like to start with a little story about myself, and it'll tie into why we do the things we do. So my story, just if we can take 5 minutes, starts on a boat actually, just rocking along adrift. My parents had actually just ran away from Vietnam. It was 1975, the end of the Vietnam War happened, and the American troops had all pulled out, and my family had rushed and gathered whatever they could, and with the shirts and skins on their back, they basically ran out onto the fields and got picked up by a boat and set adrift, hoping to get picked up. You know, this was a very tragic time, as most people know that about it, is that a lot of people died, did not make it to other countries, were starved to death overseas. You know, my family was a victim of a lot of these same structural imbalances that didn't happen in healthcare and access. Luckily, I wasn't born yet. My older brother was just a newborn baby coming across, and my older sister, she did not make it across the trip and died. And so I never met my sister, but you know, it's all these things that kind of set the stage for sort of my development. We were lucky enough, we were adrift for about 3 days, about ran out of food, and American troop ship came by and picked us up, and we kind of traipsed across the country, and we end up getting put in a refugee camp in Pennsylvania, in rural Pennsylvania. That's where I was born, so I'm a product of a refugee camp myself and family of immigrants and first generation. My family was, you know, extremely poor, just like every other immigrant that came over with nothing. My parents both worked in factories all their life, but I feel that my life was very, very full and very happy. I never want to paint that as necessarily negative. You know, we had as a little child, you think about now, you want all those things about nice clothes, nice cars. And, you know, when I was 2 years old, I grew up in a house, in a 2-bedroom house with 15 people living in it. And I thought it was the best thing ever because there's just families, uncles, and cousins crawling all over each other. And what does a kid want? They want playmates, and they want to run around and get in trouble in the woods. And I had lots of that. So I feel very blessed despite what most people think about a very disadvantaged background and growing up. I remember my days spent, my parents used to, you know, pick up all these beauty supplies, things you would pick up at the mall, not that the malls are open right now, and all these little hair clips. And my mom used to bring back boxes of these hair clips that we'd make with hot glue guns, and we get paid like 10 cents a hair clip. And so we just take 10,000 of them and bring them home, and we'd sit on the floor in the dining room floor, put on the TV, and we'd sit around, and I'd learned as a 6-year-old how to hot glue gun together hair clips and barrettes. So I'm really good at that. You know, you know, I'd say in my modern time that I offer my kids, people pay a lot of money for this active arts and crafts with their parents. But, you know, understanding things better that I did now, I really understood that that's actually was child labor back then. So, you know, but it was okay. It built some qualities that I had. I remember very distinctly for years that when I was 10 years old, my parents finally bought a house and had moved out from the trailer park that we had lived in. And at 10 years old, I entered 5th grade. And for 3 years, every Christmas, every birthday, I wished for one thing, and I finally got it. It was a bed. I'd not slept in a bed for the first 10 years of my life. And so I finally got a bedroom that was shared with my brothers and everyone else, but it didn't matter because I had slept on a mat on the floor next to my parents' room for my entire life up until then. So it was amazing to finally, and I just cried that day, just, you know, sitting there in my little twin bed for the first time ever in 10 years. And thinking about that now, it's just kind of interesting to be, you know, what's important to life and what do you need to be successful? You know, life progressed on and I advanced through, and I was luckily a pretty smart kid, even though I was at a pretty rural high school that didn't have a lot of access to things, and people recognized that I was doing pretty well, and I was fortunate enough that I took tests very well and was tracked into a lot of these programs. But, you know, I didn't really have the advising that I work on now from academically, and had nobody in medicine, nobody gone to college even in my family. So we really didn't know how to navigate any of these systems. I still remember that, like, my parents had worked in factories all their life and did up until the day they retired. And I spent on my college application, I had lied on my parents' educational level just because I was ashamed both their financial, their education. I had lied that they'd gone to some college and didn't finish just because I thought, gosh, I just like, how was I going to be applying to these great schools? And I come from basically nothing. It's so silly because looking at it now, it's like, oh my God, I was killing my own application. Like I didn't even know that putting that on was actually going to help my application. That's how little academic support I had. They just like, you're a smart kid, just apply. But nobody was really there to guide anything. So I'm like lying on my application and actually hurting myself. It was so funny, you know. I was fortunate enough that I got it to a lot of great universities and ended up attending University of Pennsylvania, which is the Ivy League in Philadelphia. For better for worse, known mostly for the Trump family these days that they attended. Um, you know, it was really interesting because when I went there, there was a huge dichotomy I'd never witnessed before about social status and standing, where all of a sudden I was at these dorms and my roommates and people, my dorm mates, one of them was like the consulate to Chile. Another one owned Caterpillar, Central America. Another one had spent their entire year at prep school and had lived, you know, at boarding school for the last like 6 years. And it was just like completely blown away conceptually because I never even knew people that had lived like this, you know, and not saying there weren't good and bad people. They're all wonderful people, but just the backgrounds they came from were just so different from mine. And I just had trouble finding people that really related to where I was coming from. You know, I was interested in medicine, but I didn't know how to apply. So I went to the pre-med programs and they said, oh, here's some research programs. And all my friends were getting connected through they had families that were doctors or their parents were, and they were connected to this cardiologist to work in this EP lab, which I didn't even know what electrophysiology stood for in college. I didn't even know what that was. And, you know, and the college was trying to connect me with some positions to go volunteer at and work at. And I'm like, but I couldn't do it because I couldn't afford to, because I had no way to pay for rent while I was in college during the summers. So I worked as an RA, resident advisor, during school because it paid for basically free room and board while I was at college. And so I had to go back home. So every summer I went back and worked at the factory where my mom worked. It's Kellogg's, actually. It's where they make cereal, you know, Frosted Flakes and everything. So I know Raisin Bran very well, for too well, actually. So I worked at the factory where my parents worked every summer at the plant, just because it's the only way I could afford to have food when I came back at college. And then, you know, you're looking at your college apps and applying to now medical school apps and talking about like, what did you do for research? And everyone talking about where they traveled and vacationed in Europe and researching at the electrophysiology lab. And meanwhile, I was working at the plant, you know, trying to make ends meet so I could keep enrolled at college for the next year. So amazingly, I got accepted into medical school, had wonderful opportunities through that. And I feel like I was sort of very lucky because I sort of stumbled my way through college, through medical school, through everything with very little career advisement, very little academic support, and kind of being lucky enough that I sort of got through on my own kind of grit, hard work, and sort of luck, truthfully. So I come here, and I've been here in Fresno for the last 17 years, both residency as a physician here. I've had lots of roles, and I sort of committed my life to you know, pipeline programs and creating physicians for the future. But I tell that story really because, like, I don't really tell it to make people feel bad about themselves at all. I mean, I tell it because I want you to understand that we are looking for that. Those are the things we're looking for in applications. Those stories are things I hope you guys and a lot of the audience can relate to. That, you know, you may not have come from the backgrounds and the access to have college-bound professors as parents, or have the financial things that access to do the things that some other people would do. But I just want to dispel the myth about applications, that we are really looking holistically at apps and looking for people who are coming from these communities who give back to their communities. I joke to a lot of people who know me that basically, you know, I do what I said on my medical school admission, that I went into it for underserved medicine. I went in to build pipelines, and I do it, and I still do what I set out to do 20 years ago. But understand that and now that I'm in administration and sort of a leader, which is sometimes hard for me to think about sometimes, is that, you know, I really tell all you guys, you know, medicine's a wonderful career. I hope that many of you guys will follow it. Don't do it for money. Don't do it for fame. Don't do it for someone else. Do it because you want to do it. Do it because it's meaningful to you. But don't be discouraged that you don't have the access or didn't come from the background that you think physicians that you saw come from, because we run programs here that are looking for people like you. The fact you're on here from the Valley, representing the people and working on it, that's what we want. We want people who are going to be community leaders. We want people to be researchers. We want people to be public policy do what you're passionate about. We want passion on your application on medical school. I don't want the same cookie cutter application. I want someone who I can envision what kind of doctor they're going to be. And I'm out of time, but I will close by introducing the next speaker. But I'll tell you that I was fortunate enough to read this person's admission, and I was on admissions committee when Dr. Picart was applying to medical school. And she was exactly the kind of spike that I talk about in med school applications, that I said, you know what? This is the kind of person that I can envision what kind of doctor they're going to be in 10 years. So I was super happy to be involved from everything from admissions to her 4 years of medical school to now being involved in residency, and already such an accomplished person. But I can't wait to see, I've seen what she's done in the last 5 years, and I can't wait to see what she's going to do in the next 5 and 15 beyond that. So I love, that's what brings meaning to my life as a doctor here. So I hope that you guys can all find that. And I hope that these next 2 days help you with giving that stepping stone up. So I will end there. Thank you so much for the time, and I will introduce now Dr. Enid Picart. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Banh, Dr. Phillips. This is an amazing honor to be really have an opportunity to speak to you all. I feel like I engage better in a room, of course, but it's very different now, and we have to stay safe because of COVID. It's really surreal to be called doctor. And just a few years ago, I was in your shoes. I was in your shoes, giving my all to try to see how I can work on my application, study for the MCAT, and apply into medical school. And it's crazy that I went from applying to actually wearing my white coat today. Granted, in emergency medicine, I think this might be the first time I've worn my white coat. I usually wear a vest when I work in the emergency room. But I just want to say thank you for allowing this opportunity to speak with you all. As Dr. Banh mentioned, it's really hard to find such a touching story, and Dr. Banh has an amazing way of telling his story. From my story and his, what I want you all to really understand is that everyone's path is different, and you shouldn't be ashamed of your path at all. I think a lot of it is really taking the opportunity to internalize what you've been through and how each barrier that you unfortunately have to face, and you continue moving forward. I'm not sure if many of you have had this experience, but my first interaction in the medical field, and one of the reasons why I knew that I wanted to be in a doctor, was that I was my mom's medical interpreter at the age of 7 in the emergency room. And again, my family, I'm first generation. I'm the only one in my family that actually pursued medicine and am a doctor now. And my parents didn't really have very strong academic backgrounds to a highest education level of 6th grade in their respective countries. And so going to an emergency room at the age of 7 with the little bit of knowledge of English that you already have because your first language is Spanish, and trying to translate for your family is tough. And that was my first experience and exposure to medicine, albeit it was crazy going into an emergency room because my mom tenía aire en la espalda. You know, it's a common phrase that we use in our Latino culture that says air in my back, quick translation, but it just means back pain. And so I want everyone to just really understand that your journey is what your journey is, and that's what you should be really presenting in your application when you're applying. And also, as I remember my journey, it was not an easy one at all. But I think the one thing that really made a difference was just the perseverance to pursue regardless of the challenges I faced. And in addition to that, there was reminders that I set up for myself throughout my journey. And in one occasion, I had just graduated from UC Merced. I'm a UC Merced alumna. So I did see some UC Merced students chime in on the chat. That's great. I'm really excited to have just wonderful, like over 400 students from all across the Valley here. And so one of the things that helped me remind myself as to where I wanted to be was I did have an opportunity to participate in the then UC Davis surgical internship program. I don't think it's unfortunate, but I'm not sure if that program is still it's still active. But I remember being on that, being a part of that program and acquiring a set of scrubs that said UC Davis. It's a UC Davis stamp on the pant leg as well as in the scrub top. And I acquired such scrubs, and I kept myself from, I kept them with me. And I find that so odd, right? A pair of scrubs. But I remember when I had those scrubs and I had just graduated from UC Merced, I told myself that this is where I wanted to go for medical school. And I told myself that, and I would have them folded right next to my dresser that at that time was right next to my door. And so every morning when I was getting ready, I would see that set of scrubs with the UC Davis insignia on it as a reminder that that was where I was going to be one day as a medical student. And so I took time off from my journey, and it's okay. I think when I mentor students, there's this fear of taking a time off and having to apply right out of college, right into medical school. And in my journey, that was not the case. I did take some time off. And so I ended up taking some time off to work on my MCAT, work on really getting more involvement in the community. I have a drive to really work with the local communities that I grew up in. And so I ended up taking that time off to work in these communities as a AmeriCorps member and then also as a community worker and while I was working on my application. And I think it's just really, really important to take those opportunities and run with them in your application as well. And as I was pursuing my career in regards to what I wanted to do and where I saw myself, I interacted with amazing people who really helped develop how to go about applying for medical school. And I didn't come from a family of doctors. I didn't come from people who really understood what to do right after college and how to even apply into medical school. And so one of the things that I always encourage students is that take that time to really focus on yourself and what you want to present and how you want to present your application overall. I think it's also really important that you find and you run with things that you enjoy doing so that your application just show what your passion is rather than telling it. And I think that time that I took off before applying into medical school was what really helped me. I did do a post-bac year, and so with that post-bac year, it's a year where it's kind of like a medical enrichment year for folks who might have been out of school for some time, who wanted to kind of revamp their application. And so I did a post-bac year to also prove to myself, because I had been out of school for some time, whether or not I had what it took to be a medical student. And I did it, and I'll be honest, it was very similar. As in medical school, they always say that expression of you're learning basically there's like a fire hose connected to your brain because of all the information that you're learning. And so I think it's just really important that we continue going in regards to having grit, really having las ganas is like the term that I like to use into pursuing your medical career, and really owning your barriers and owning up to your failures, but not seeing them as failures, but as opportunities to improve yourself, as well as improving your application and seeing how best you can become that physician that you want to be. And I think it's exciting that you're here and you're already doing a step that I wish I would have done when I was pursuing medical school. And that was to be a part of a conference. Like when I was going through this process, I didn't have this. So build your community of support, reach out to mentors that you see as mentors, like Dr. Banh, Dr. Kinman, Dr. Gaslam, who are wonderful mentors in my development, and really work with them and ask for help, because I think that's one thing that many medical or pre-med students don't really do. They don't really ask for the help that they need. And I think that this conference and similar conferences are what you should be really reaching for and trying to gather as much information so that you can continue on with your journey. I think that my time is probably already up, but I hope that in the future, as I interact in more developments of education, be it pre-med, that I have an opportunity to talk to you more and to really continue to help you reach your goal of becoming a Central Valley physician, because we need you. We definitely need you. And I'll see you soon as my colleagues. Thank you.
Dr. Phillips, you're muted.
Are you able to hear me now? Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Picart and Dr. Banh, for that inspiring message. You're absolutely right, Dr. Picart. We need more of you to enter the profession, and this is just the beginning. So our first session is going to begin at 1 o'clock. I'm going to share my screen so you can see the agenda for the day again. And what we will do is we will stay here. If you would like to log off and return at 1 o'clock, you're welcome. Our first session will be successful mentoring strategies at 1 o'clock. So please check back at 1 o'clock today. Thank you.